I will start my debate in 3, 2, 1. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. I am AYUNDA LIYANA MUTIARA as the first speaker of the negative team. Today I stand here. I really disagree and go against this motion today that in post-conflict status, e.g., post-civil war, regime change, colonialism, this house believes that history textbooks should focus on teaching bottom-up historiography rather than top-down historiography. Before I get into my argument, let me give you some rebuttal from the first speaker of the proposition team. The first speaker of the proposition team says something about that a lot of elites actually are different from ordinary people because we are working class and they are elites and they are having power to run some country. They are the one that hold the power. Relatability does not automatically create national unity, and that is exactly when the proposition argument collapses. Yes, elite-centered history may feel distant from ordinary people, but the purpose of post-conflict education is not to create emotional self-injections into every historical figure. The purpose is to rebuild a functioning nation after the violence. Their arguments assume that students only develop nationalism when they personally relate to historical figures. That is empirically and philosophically weak. People do not unite solely because they see themselves reflected in history. They unite because they share common constitutions, common civic values, and common political future. When students strongly identify with narratives of historical victimhood, they are more likely to inherit anger personally rather than analyze the history critically. Instead of our country suffered together, the narratives or the narrations becomes my group suffered because of your group. This is not reconciliation. That is emotional inheritance of conflict. There are actually a lot of civil war going on in Indonesia. Can we imagine that if we use the bottom-up historical to tell students in school, we may have a lot of different stories from a lot of different ethnic, from a lot of different people that are maybe different religion and etc. Can we imagine that? That is not making us unite. That is not making us going together. That's making us divided and broken. We are not saying that bottom-up historiography should be erased. Our stance is that history textbooks is fragile post-conflict societies should not prioritize bottom-up historiography over top-down historiography because the state's first responsibility after a conflict is to rebuild the first, national cohesion, the second, institutional legitimacy, and the third is shared civic identity. Without those, peace can or will collapse. The proposition romanticize plurality and inherited democratic and healing. But in post-conflict societies, uncontrolled narrative pluralism can easily become the constitutions of war through memory. History textbooks are not solely unachieved. They are nations-building instruments, and nations recovering from violence cannot survive if every competing group teaches incompatible versions of victimhood. My first argument is that a state cannot reconcile if it cannot first create a shared national reality. The biggest flaw in the proposition is they assume that truth alone creates peace, but in reality it does not. In post-conflict societies, the immediate danger is not the lack of representation. The immediate danger is societal fragmentation. Bottom-up historiography often produces the first, combating victim narratives, the second, ethnic memory wars, and the third, an inherited resentment. When every group teaches history from its own suffering stories, the nations stop seeing itself as one political community. Instead, people continue viewing themselves as first victim, second betrayed group, and the third is historical enemies. This is precisely what happened in Bosnia and Herzegovina. Of war and after war, education decentralized among ethnic lines, and schools learn different historical narratives in different schools. Instead of reconciliation, education reinforced ethnic divisions and separate identities. This is devastating truth. When textbooks become battlegrounds of collective trauma, one constitutional identity, and one minimum shared reality. Without a common historical framework, democracy itself becomes impossible. The second is shared narratives reduce the risk of intergenerational conflict. Conflict does not only survive through weapons, it survives through memories inheritance. Children who grow up consuming narrative culture exclusively on one suffering or betrayal and ethnic victimhood. Research on post-conflict education consistently shows that historical narrative shape future intergroup relations and political stability. This means educational priority after conflict should be not maximizing narrative plurality, but minimizing the reproductions of hostility. Top-down historiography is better positioned to first de-escalate collective trauma, second standardize reconciliation narratives, and the third is to prevent memory segregation. The third is history textbooks are not therapeutic, they are state infrastructures. History textbooks are not history textbooks are world building the state infrastructure by making them different, by using the bottom up historiography. We're making a lot of history textbook showing the different stories from a different ethnic, from a different religion, and from different people, and that's what makes it like breaking down our peace, breaking down our nations, because we need the unity, we need one focus story from the top down. And this is what we talk about, what we talk here is about the post-conflict. And everyone is still on fire, everyone is still have the trauma. By making the stories different from one textbook to one another, that is making our state collapse. The proposition believes that peace comes from multiplying voices, but post-conflict history shows that when every group teaches its own pain without a unifying framework, societies do not heal, they're fragmented. In fragile status, history education must first stabilize, unify, and reconstruct the civic trust. Only after peace becomes durable can societies safely expand toward broader and pluralistic historiography. Because without nation first, there is no space for competing narrative at all. For these reasons, this House should reject the motions. And that is for my argument, and I truly disagree with the motion today that in post-conflict status, e.g. post-civil war regime change and colonialism, this House believes that history textbook should focus on teaching bottom-up historiography rather than top-down historiography. Thank you so much.